code. This is the etiquette. Excuse me. Flag is a flag. It is not clothing. You might hear the American Legion says, oh, it's only a representation, and they have no problem with wearing other forms of it as long as it's not actually repurposed from an actual flag. But if you're celebrating the 4th of July, complete with the burgers, hot dogs, and American flag napkins, you might consider some other sort of napkin. The flag code is very particular when it comes to wiping mustard off your mouth with the flag. You might hear that there are flag police out there that can fine you when you offend the official flag code. That is not true. There are no flag police. The flag code is recommended guidelines. They're not legally binding. And here's one of the first ones. Never use the flag as clothing, bedding, or drapery. It represents a living country and is considered a living thing. Shouldn't be used on costumes or athletic uniforms. A flag patch may be attached to the uniform of patriotic organizations, military personnel, police, and firefighters. It bans the flag from being converted into clothing of any kind. And the lapel flag pin, being a replica, should be worn on the left lapel near the heart. Never use the flag for advertising or promotional purposes or printed on paper napkins, boxes, or anything else intended for temporary use and discard. But again, there are no flag police. A little bit about the national motto. It has morphed a bit through the years. Back in 1776, it was E pluribus unum. Some of you may think that is still the motto. But in 1956, under Eisenhower, Congress changed it to In God We Trust. That phrase can be traced back to the War of 1812 at Fort McHenry, when Francis Scott Key wrote the final stanza to the Star Spangled Banner, saying, "And this be our motto, in God is our trust." That was changed to In God We Trust in 1864, and they started putting it on the 2-cent coins. Then it was added to the gold and silver coins the next year. Finally, started being put on all US coins in 1938. Then it began being added to paper money in 1957. It's been on all currencies since 1963. Did you know that we have a Constitution Day with these 4 goals? Teachers in our library are preparing for this day next month on later this fall on September 17th, if the library is open by then. Future webinars will cover parts of the Constitution, but we don't need to be constitutional lawyers. We should understand our rights, however, especially since the Constitution has been in the headlines quite a bit in recent months, and interpreting is the hard part, especially for lawyers, even for the Supreme Court. And now Mary Ann Simpson will share some info on citizenship and naturalization.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Inspiring words of Emma Lazarus on the base of the Statue of Liberty. Citizenship is the common thread that connects all Americans. Former Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis said that the only title in our democracy superior to that of president is the title of citizen. We are a nation bound not by race or religion, but by shared values of freedom, liberty, and equality. And thousands of immigrants each year seek naturalization. A path to citizenship. You may qualify for naturalization if you're at least 18 years old, have been a permanent resident for at least 5 years, have no special circumstances, and meet all other eligibility requirements. During that period, though, you can't have been absent from the United States for more than 6 months. You have to pay a fee of about $725 to process your application and pass the citizenship test. Also, if you are a spouse of a US citizen and have been a permanent resident for 3 years or more, then you can apply for citizenship. Also, members of the armed forces who've served for at least 1 year and applied within 6 months of an honorable discharge are also eligible to apply for citizenship. Could you pass the citizenship test? There are 100 civics questions on the oral naturalization test, and during the interview, applicants will be asked up to 10 questions from a list of the 100 questions, and they have to answer 6 of the 10 correctly to pass the test. Certain applicants, because of their age and time as a legal permanent residents, may be able to take the civics test in a language of their choice. Sample questions, try these. How many amendments does the Constitution have? 27. The House of Representatives has how many voting members? 435. Plus, though, 6 non-voting members, which include the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And those representatives are allowed to vote in congressional committees. When was the Constitution written? 1787. And name one of the writers of the Federalist Papers. James Madison, writing under his pseudonym Publius, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay. In Federalist 51, Madison wrote, "If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary." The Federalist Papers were hailed as one of the most important political documents in American history because they explained the key provisions of the proposed Constitution and the nature of the Republican form of government. Have you read them since high school? The Federalist Papers were 85 essays written between 1787 and 1788. They argued that the decentralization of power that existed under the Articles of Confederation prevented the new nation from becoming strong enough to compete on the world stage or to quell internal insurrections. In Federalist 10, which became the most influential of all the essays, Madison addressed political factions. He understood that factionalism was naturally occurring within democratic political structures, and that people of different economic, social, religious, and ethnic backgrounds are bound to disagree over issues and ally themselves with those who are similar. But Madison saw factionalism as a danger to the American people as a whole, and he wrote Federalist 10 to promote national unity. The full texts are on the Library of Congress website if you want to see them. The Federalist Papers in 1788 also saw limited circulation outside of New York at the time they were written. They also fell short of really convincing many New Yorkers, who sent far more anti-Federalists than Federalists to the state ratification convention. The naturalization oath of allegiance to the United States of America. This is the oath that new citizens take by name towards the very end of their naturalization ceremony, and I think it's worth repeating. I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, potentate, state, or sovereignty, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform non-combatant services in the armed forces of the United States when required by the law, that I will perform work of national importance under civilian direction when required by the law, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, so help me God. How many of us born in the United States could recite this oath as enthusiastically at the folks at the naturalization ceremony? Local naturalization ceremonies are held here in the Williamsburg area, usually twice a year. On Flag Day, which is in June, inside the Colonial Williamsburg Capitol building. Great place to have it. Also in December, a smaller ceremony in the same building. League members register voters after the nationalization ceremonies attend every year. Unfortunately, because of the coronavirus, these ceremonies have been postponed for this year. These ceremonies are open to the public, and I cannot urge you enough, if you have not seen a naturalization ceremony, to attend. They are incredibly moving. Most new citizens are very eager to vote, and hopefully they will not join the large number of non-voters that currently make up our country. Now back to Mary Ann Moxon for a serious question.
Is there a difference between a civic duty and a civic responsibility? Do responsibilities come with rights? The concept of civic duty is based on the principle that citizens owe some allegiance to their country and their government, and that the government in turn protects its citizens. Ancient Rome generally gets credit for this concept. The founders of the US feature the concept of civic duty prominently in the US Constitution. Maybe we need a refresher course. They might be essentially the same, but mandatory civic duties obviously include the infamous serving on a jury and paying taxes, males needing to register with selective service, and basically obeying the law. Voluntary civic duties include voting in elections, serving on boards or commissions, and speaking out when liberties are threatened. Rights and responsibilities, those two words should flow off your lips as easily as hopes and dreams, pots and pans, vim and vigor, rock and roll, and law and order. Parents could stress this to their children. Teachers usually teach this too. Liberty, equality, and freedom are words heard a lot recently, but with these words come duties, rights, and responsibilities. Does silence equal complicity? The slogan on these buttons can be seen in recent days relating to racial justice and protests going on. Silence is the voice of complicity, you may have heard. Speak out. Speaking out is the language of change. Do you agree with Desmond Tutu's words here? He said, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and you say that you're neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Words do matter. Parents advise their children this all the time. But what can you do to help our nation heal during these divided times? What you do matters more than what you say. Words matter. What you do not say matters even more. If this was your phone the last time you called any elected official, it has been too long. When was the last time that you called your Congressman Rob Whitman or your Congresswoman Elaine Luria, or James City County Board of Supervisors, or Williamsburg City Council or Mayor, or school board members? We elect them, then we tend to desert them. Attend some local meetings, invite a friend to join you when it's safe to do so. There are some enlightening films on Netflix now besides Tiger King. As Elmo's daddy told him on the recent Sesame Street CNN town hall, start by learning. If you're not sure who your elected officials are, visit our website, lwvwilliamsburg.org. You can click on Facts for Voters, and you will have the contact information for every elected official in our area. These women marched in 1912 so that women could someday vote. Today, League members still march and attend rallies. We march for voting rights, redistricting, racial justice, sensible gun laws, etc. And now a few bits of information for teachers and parents trying homeschooling. There are some wonderful civic education resources out there. Do teachers still teach civics? As we said, absolutely, but usually part of social studies, history, or government. The Williamsburg Commission on, the Virginia Commission on Civics Education started out in 2015, and a LIG member is going to be appointed to that very shortly, along with elected and appointed members. There are some teachers still teaching civics or government. Our local Williamsburg Area League provided funds for substitute teachers last fall to allow these 7 civics and government teachers to attend this event that was held at Jamestown Settlement. The Virginia Department of Education requires that all of these documents should be taught to pupils in the public schools. Obviously, the Declaration of Independence, the history of the flags, general principles of the Constitution, the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, one that I'm not real familiar with, the 3 charters of the Virginia Company, and the Virginia Declaration of Rights. Also, students are supposed to be giving emphasis to the citizenship responsibilities that are inherent in their rights. Teachers are probably familiar with these, but it's worth noting. One of the most useful websites and resources, in my humble opinion, is the Civics Renewal Network. It's a consortium and includes links to countless civic education organizations, such as the Annenberg Classroom at the University of Pennsylvania and the National Constitution Center. Those are the 2 that I found most helpful in researching a lot of the information I needed for this presentation. Here's another resource with links to helpful civic education organizations. They've been around since 1965. The curriculum is taught in 80 countries and in every state. And it's an umbrella organization that sponsors a lot of programs that teachers may be familiar with. iCivics is another organization that was founded by Sandra Day O'Connor, and it has a lot of good free resources for teachers. And then there's another Constitutional Sources Project and ConSource, which is also a fantastic resource. As I draw to a close, one vote does matter. One myth that refuses to die is that one vote preserved English as our official language. Another debunked story is that one vote gave Adolf Hitler leadership of Nazi Germany. However, there are quite a few elections that were decided by one vote. Here in Virginia in 2017, we had a civics lesson in One Vote Counts in nearby Hampton. The control of the Virginia House was in limbo for a few days as to who would be representing Hampton. The first election results showed one winner by a small margin. A few days later, they did a recount that ended in a tie. And finally, a drawing was held and her opponent was the winner. Is this really the way that we want to be represented? By sheer luck? Is that the way democracy is supposed to work? One graph is worth 1,000 words. Only 56.9% turnout in the US in the most recent elections in 2016 in the presidential election. And that was up from other years. I think we can do better than that. And my final words of wisdom come from Susan B. Anthony. Someone struggled for your right to vote, use it. And I end with the upcoming schedule for the 3rd Tuesday of the next 3 months, when we'll be covering voting rights in America, much discussed these days, women's suffrage in America in August, since that's the 100th anniversary of women getting the right to vote. And finally in September, barriers to voting, which is also big time in the news. So please put the 3rd Tuesday of the month on your calendar at 4 p.m. and hopefully it'll go a little bit smoother at the beginning than today. Thank you for participating.